You wanna grow and go and get there. Sometimes upward, sometimes nowhere. You've got the ideas, you're looking up at the clouds. But how do you start standing out of the crowd? So build it with us from the ground up.
Hey everybody, welcome to From the Ground Up. I'm Zach Conway. I'm here with Kelsey McKenna. What's going on, Kelsey?
Not much. I am so excited for today's topic. It is a topic I'm very, very, very into. So
Yeah,
am
we sort
I
of
introducing the topic?
yeah, let's go for it. You walk us through it. It's something we talk about every single day, basically every hour of every day. But yeah, walk us through what we're going to be diving into.
Okay. So we are going to talk about selecting technology to support your business. So advisors, obviously we are a tech company that serves financial advisors. So we do spend a lot of time with advisors who are evaluating technology. And a lot of times it's not just their investing process or investing experience technology. It's also other technology, planning tools, CRM, basically the tech stack. And this has kind of been a hot topic in recent years because advisor tech has really exploded, at least since I first entered the industry. There are so many players. The Kitsy's map is just like huge. You can't even read it anymore. And so there are a lot of decisions that need to be made. And a lot of times we see advisors approaching this in ways that might make it more difficult for them going forward. And to tie it together with what we do at Seeds, we select tech for ourselves as well, B2B tech to serve our needs. So we also have experience, of course, doing that in our business as well. But I know you have a lot of opinions on this because you were an advisor selecting tech prior to founding Seeds. So maybe you could kind of give us some more background on the topic.
Yeah, I think the topic, as we try to touch on these different topics, it's applicable certainly to advisors, but really businesses in general, right? As you think about how to run an efficient business that's going to grow, you're going to need to have technology across sort of the stack of your business to try to make those things happen. So, but yeah, for us as advisors and as I was helping to build the business, you know, we're looking at that KITSIS map, right? You're looking at all these sort of categories that the industry has sort of agreed to are the categories from which you need to select hopefully the best options. And so we were doing that, right? As we were thinking about the future of the business, how we wanted to grow, how we wanted to support clients. Hey, let's kind of run through the list and do some interviews and make some decisions. And then you talk about that kind of concept of the tech stack and how those things are all actually, how you attempt to connect them all in some meaningful way. But I think, really the origin story of Seeds and why we ended up starting a new company to build technology for advisors was luckily we had this moment of sort of pausing and saying, all right, we have all these predefined categories, right? Literally on that map, here's the breakdown, and therefore that must be where we should be selecting from. That's the list. It's finite. There are no other choices, and those are the sort of categories that for sure we should be thinking about. And yet, as we really thought about the future of our experience, what we were trying to deliver as an experience to our clients moving forward, it felt like something was missing, right? Trying to stitch together from those existing options, it felt like it was incomplete. And so, what specifically was incomplete for us in thinking about our customer experience was around investing. And so there are sort of traditional approaches in the industry of what that investing process should be between a financial advisor and their client. And again, as we were thinking about it as a business, it was like, it's not really working for us. It's not engaging these new demographics of investors the way that it really needs to in order to actually hit these growth objectives that we're talking about as a business. And so what should that experience be? And how do we make it deeper and have investors feel more heard and understood, and all the things that were important to us in the wealth business? And again, it didn't exist. So we were fortunate to sort of step out of the options and focus on what is the actual user journey, if you will, or customer journey and experience we were trying to deliver, specifically in our case around that investing kind of story arc. Couldn't find a choice, didn't see how to connect the existing choices, and said, screw it, let's build our own thing and start to use it ourselves. And then ultimately, of course, that led to sort of a broader thesis that hey, that experience just really didn't exist yet in the industry. We hadn't thought about it in that way. So there was no technology there. And so it was sort of the inverse, right? I think the takeaway for us was, wow, there's all of these amazing pieces of technology across these different kind of pillars of the business, but unless you really start with experience, right?
Mhm.
Beginning to end experience, what putting the customer at the center of that experience, you don't know what to pick. And maybe the options on the table aren't the right choices. And so
Mhm.
that's what led to Seeds. And that what, now to your point, as we think about using technology for running the Seeds business, we try to think the same way. What experience are we trying to deliver? So what outside tech does Seeds need? But also, and I'll pass this to you because you're really in these conversations every day with advisors, as we at Seeds now talk to other advisors about them trying to figure out their process, their experience, or maybe first starting sometimes, unfortunately, with, well, what options should I pick from the list? We're trying to coach them through that,
Mhm.
through those decisions. But maybe speak to that.
Yeah, sure. I do think like something that um is easy to fall into, whether you're an advisor or anyone selecting like B2B technology, is there's this assumption that if you get the right tech, your problems will be solved. And maybe the problem is you're not growing. Maybe the problem is you can't scale your growth. Maybe the problem, there are a number of problems that you might be trying to solve. For the person listening to this podcast, it's probably you're trying to grow. You may be a smaller firm and you're trying to kind of start that growth wheel, get the growth wheel turning and moving. Or maybe you're trying to scale it, or maybe you're trying to do something new to stimulate growth because it's grown stagnant, right? So we talk a lot about growth. And I think that a lot of tech firms say we help you grow. And that is 100% true. Tech can help you grow, but there is so much more to it than that. So when I've talked to advisors at conferences, not just when they're evaluating Seeds, but at conferences in previous roles, my own dad is an advisor. It's a tricky thing to select your tech as an advisor. There's so much going on, especially in wealth management businesses. There's everything that happens behind the scenes. There's so much knowledge that the advisors bringing to the table about all of these wealth management topics as well. And then there's just generally running the business. Like, what do you need to do to run the business? So I think it would be really helpful to kind of zoom out and talk about where tech fits into your business. Like, where does it fit, and what else needs to be going right for the tech to really make a difference and get you to meet your goals. And then we can talk about like more tactically, once that's all covered, now how do we select tech? What are some of the like best practices, in at least in my experience and your experience? And again, we don't know everything, but in our experience, what are some of the best practices when you're going about selecting your technology and building your tech stack?
Yeah, I think that sort of silver bullet mentality is so easy to go toward, right?
Yeah.
There's so many things to build and so many things to think about. And it feels like a heavy lift. So
Yeah.
rather than do that to some extent, what's the piece of technology that's just going to help me sort of leapfrog that? And I think the growth thing, the amount of times I talk to advisors who have very little defined in terms of
Yeah.
their story, the experience they're going to deliver, the services they're going to deliver, how they're going to deliver those services,
Who
what
their
human capital
customer is.
they're going to, who they're even selling to. Not a lot of that is defined,
Yeah.
and they're asking me questions about what marketing technology should they use to sort of blast the market with. And again, the response is, well, to tell what story?
Yeah.
Like, there is no, sure, you can go pay for leads in theory, but then how many are you really closing, at what cost, what's
Yeah.
the human capital just to create that process, and then once they're onboarded, what are you delivering?
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
what'll
it's
happen if
all
it
through that.
works? Say it starts working,
Yeah,
then what?
exactly.
There's also that problem of like, you do have to kind of be planning for it to work. If all these things are happening in unison, then there are a lot of other things to be evaluating, which I think I've noticed a lot of advisors are not, especially small firms. That human capital side is so critical, and not thinking through that ahead of the tech stack makes you have to reselect and change your tech stack as you grow. This happens in startups a lot as well. Some of it's unavoidable, but some of it I think could be avoided with a little more thoughtfulness ahead of the tech selection process.
I guess a way to think about it, and you've pointed this out, I've watched you point this out to advisors who are struggling with bandwidth, right?
Hmm.
So they have some baseline game plan and
Yeah.
they're struggling with like sort of generally administrative or operational bandwidth. And so they're kind of saying, is there a piece of technology that'll just make me more efficient and solve all my problems? Or do I just hire another human to, help solve these problems? And the answer is kind of the combination of both of those things.
Right.
It's the what's making you in general, what's the foundational problem makes this feel like it's not scalable right now?
Hmm.
And then, okay, is there a technology solution potentially that can help you be more efficient sort of backstage in the business? But that only works if there's a human, either that advisor or another human person in a designed org chart that can scale into the future. And
Hmm.
again, you need those things in place before you can kind of in a vacuum make the uh, you know technology decision, or do
Yeah.
I just hire this one specific person to do this one specific thing?
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
that's part of the
So
challenge.
maybe we can talk. So really quick, if you don't mind, because I get really excited about
Of
this.
course. Of course not.
Let's let's like zoom out to where tech fits in all of this. So we've talked about a lot of
Yeah.
things. We mentioned like the actual offering itself. So what's your service, your product service offering? So if we talk about in episode, I think 3 of the podcast, we talked about vision, right? So we're setting
Right.
our vision because we're going to grow into the future. This is like a distant vision. It's inspiring. The vision is not a number, just a hint. It's not like a billion in AUM. That's not a vision. That is an outcome possibly of achieving the vision, but it's not the vision. So we have this vision. Then we have our mission, which is a little bit more specific. Like what are we aiming toward right now? And then we have like kind of to skip over a couple steps, we get to our offering. This is like our product and service offering. It is
Right.
critical, and we will dive into this in a different episode because this is my other favorite topic, that we know who we are serving with this offering.
It's huge.
I see it's like the number one most missed thing that I see. And another hint, it's also not a number. A million in AUM or in investable assets is not a persona. You don't know who you're speaking to. So who are you solving this for, and what are their problems? What is their pain? What are their concerns? Critical, right? We're not going to go there because I could spend hours. The offering itself is serving that person and that specific pain. Beneath
Yeah.
that offering, we have the experience, which is how at every touch point we are delivering upon this offering or communicating about it. So we have like the awareness stage. My ideal customer is aware of my offering. Then we have our evaluation stage. I am now serving them as they evaluate. Will this meet my needs? Will this provide me value? Is this worth it? And then we have delivery of value over time after they become a customer or a client. So what makes up your experience? This is where tech comes in. So a lot of people think that tech is your experience, basically. And they know that people are a part of it. But there's really, I think, in my mind, like 3 different things. So our experience is the people, the process, and the technology. Even if you're a one-man shop, you're just one advisor, you're still a person. So where you fit into this is critical, and how you think about your role in delivering the experience is critical, because as you just mentioned, as you scale this up, we are layering people under you to take
Yeah. Can you
away.
recreate that?
Can you repeat it using your process and technology? So if you don't have the right people, it doesn't matter what your process is, it's going to fall flat. If you don't have a good process, your tech won't work either. So all 3 of these things have to be going together. So if an advisor is coming to us or to me and asking me, what's the tech stack I want to grow? What's the best tech stack? If there isn't definition around all this other stuff, then it's really hard to say what the right tech stack is for you. So let me just pause there because I just love this so much. What say you?
To your point, it's a whole episode to dive into for advisors. Again, the zoom out is our value is to be holistic financial advisors. We're sort of the shepherds of people's financial lives. I always say we're sort of the therapists in those relationships. But then it's specifically underneath that broad umbrella of value,
Mm.
how do you do it, and what's your differentiation that speaks to, as you just said, a specific problem set for a specific kind of customer base?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that episode, and we may have a guest for that episode,
Yeah.
but about sort of, what it means to have a niche, even really specific customer base, which is not necessarily necessary, but it speaks to the importance of knowing who the heck you're selling your services to. What specific problems are you addressing? So
Hmm.
really just that's a whole episode in
Yeah.
conversation, but that's kind of the point of this episode, which is to say you need to define and articulate those things first, because again, like we touched on, you can go think of what's the best sort of most efficient advisor facing marketing tool. But
Hmm.
if you go sign a contract literally the next day when you have the piece of technology, what story are you telling, and who are you
Yeah.
sending the information to? So again, yeah, just having those things as well defined as possible, and how you do that, again, I think is a future conversation.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So we can dive into all of that. But so now that I guess contextualize, this is where tech fits in. Now we can kind of talk about selecting tech and like how it can't be just coming in and saying what is the best planning tool. And I actually think a lot of advisors are that I've worked with are very analytical. A lot of them are very good at evaluating tools. So I think that that's actually great. I think that that's amazing. I think where you can really get more honed in and make sure you're making the right selection is if you are solving for a known need. So if it's a known need in your business, like I know I need a planning tool, I know I need a CRM, I know I need some sort of like marketing tool, right? If that's a known need, then getting a lot more specific once you have all the rest of this defined around who will be using this tool, what's the overall purpose and who's going to be using it, what are the use cases today, and what do I anticipate the use cases to be tomorrow if this works and I grow as I intend to grow. And then also evaluating the company. So I think this is another thing that a lot of advisors miss, and I see a lot of dissatisfaction that has come from missing this. But don't just evaluate the tech in terms of the functionality of the technology before you, but in that evaluation process, you also should be trying to get a sense of, is this a company and a team that values their customers, that is oriented around their customers? Because that's going to be what will make sure that that company continues to turn out great product updates that are relevant to you and your business and understanding you. So are you their ideal customer, and do they orient their decision making and their product choices around their customers? Not that they take every piece of feedback and immediately deliver it, but they are working to continue to deliver value to an advisor like you, an advisor with your specific needs.
It's critical. And do they understand that it's not, hopefully not just about delivering more efficient sort of backstage, advisor facing business efficiencies, but again, to what extent is it empowering the advisor to deliver a deeper, more resonant experience?
Right.
And even with the Kitsis map, it has evolved. We should put links maybe in the podcast to the evolution. I think Michael Kitsis has kind of shown over time.
Yeah.
It was sort of nothing, and then all of a sudden this explosion of technology. And I kind of think of that era as most things were focused on faster, more efficient for the
Yeah.
advisor,
Backstage.
efficiency tools, backstage facing tools. And
Hmm.
now we are evolving, fortunately, toward, that's great, and that should be inherent in every piece of technology, but also how is it actually delivering on the experience that the advisor is
Hmm.
hoping to deliver to the client? To your point, the technology and the team running these technology businesses, and what we pride ourselves at Seeds, is, again, we know what that experience should be, and we're coaching toward that. And the product is
Hmm.
about that as much as it's about, how quick it is to press these buttons in the user interface and fill out data and things like that.
Yeah.
It really needs to be empowering the
Yeah.
actual experience.
Yeah. Any technology should, I mean, looking at efficiency is critical, especially if you're going to be growing. And looking at like, how does this help me establish repeatable processes that I can then delegate to someone else over time if this isn't my, what do they call it, like a zone of excellence as the owner of this company is. If I'm growing and if I'm layering in other people, right, where should I be spending my time? So is this something that I will be over time passing off to somebody else? So all of that makes perfect sense. But I think like you said, tying it back to experience, like, and we get this question a lot. So there's the question of like, well, my customers, I don't want to remove the human element to my conversations with my customers. And I feel like if I implement too much technology and it's too on the rails and my process is too defined, then I'm going to be losing that human to human connection. And I think it's kind of like the persona question as well. It's similar
Right.
to advisors who say, well, I don't want to limit myself to one persona. I don't want to limit myself to one process. I don't want to limit myself to one persona. The reason that honing in on that, especially if you're a smaller business, is because then you can have more meaningful conversations in a more scalable way because you already know who you're talking to, or you already have a general plan and process and how you're going to deliver it, so that when you are in the room, your tech is enabling you to focus on the person in front of you and to not be making just one-off random decisions. You're really focused on the customer. So everything that you do should be intended to improve the experience, whether it's taking something off your plate and making it way more efficient so you can spend more time with your customers, or it's putting something more on the rails so that within that construct or within that process you can have better interactions that are more valuable. But yeah, I think I think there is like a misconception that if you implement too much tech, or you have too strict of a process, or you have too strict of a persona, or whatever it is, that you're missing like the humanness. And I actually have seen it to be the opposite.
It's the opposite. Again, we're not saying you need to talk to, three people. Your market is three people, right? It
Right.
doesn't need to be so small of a marketplace, but yes, to really know who the heck you're talking to means that you can just be that much better and have more nuanced conversations
Deeper.
and delivery of
Yeah.
service to that customer base. Tell the right
Mhm.
story as people flow through your process, engage them in the right way, have the technology support that. I just want to echo the point on, there is this sort of inherent psychological fear of, tech equals less humanness, or even scale from tech equals less humanness.
Right.
And it's, the encouragement is seek technology that is really just trying, and we've said it before on previous episodes, we'll probably keep saying it forever, but it's meant to enhance the humanness. It's meant to
Mm-hmm.
empower the advisor to deliver on that more frequently, and your phrase, on the rails, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, deep qualitative therapist conversations with your clients as advisors is really what makes you the most valuable.
Right.
But there's a spectrum, right? If it's so varied and random every time someone
Yeah.
walks in your door, and then you can't connect dots on the other side of those
Mm-hmm.
conversations because you're reinventing the wheel every time.
Every time. Yeah.
Yes, as an example, you ask different questions in your discovery meetings, and so you
Yeah.
get different answers, and then how do you deliver on those answers? And so
Yeah.
you can do both. You can keep it on the rails and deliver that nuanced human connection using tech. I also think, last thing on this point from me, the rise of the robos kind of scared us
Yeah.
all as an industry, that, oh my gosh, anything that has like a username and password is really just trying to take my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, fortunately, the pendulum has swung back in the other direction of just how do we put this stuff at the fingertips of the human advisor to enhance that human connection. But that's
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so I think we've made the point, or we're trying to make the point, that it is actually better for the experience because you can have those deeper conversations. It is a little bit on the rails, so that and you mentioned it in a previous episode, but there's almost a bucketing strategy. So there should be personalization, there should be customization, and there should be really deep human interactions happening that are they're specific to that client's pain point at that moment and really meeting that need at that moment. But all the other stuff that surrounds that can be more on the rails if you know who you're working with and generally where they might fall. And that's where tech can help you. The other thing I want to point out, because I think it's often overlooked, and I actually just listened to an interview that Joe Duran did yesterday. I was listening to it, and he brought this up, and I've heard it on so many startup podcasts as well, which is like your business value overall is like inversely correlated to how much you matter to the business over time. So like as you're kind of growing your business, whether your goal is to sell it eventually or your goal is to just have an amazing business, if you're critical to every step of every process and delivering the experience to your customers, then you can't grow a business that's this excellent thing that achieves this big vision, or that you sell for, however much you're looking to sell it for, because you are the business. So it's so important that like what you're doing is repeatable, but that experience is so, and the experience is so valuable to your customers. It has to be both, and tech is going to help you get there if you do it right, if you select the right tech and you onboard and roll it out the right way, which could be a whole other episode. So that's a little off the rails, so apologies for throwing that in there.
But but Kelsey, we all think we're so special.
We
It's
are
about
so
us as
special.
advisors.
I know
Yeah, no,
advisors
it is.
are so special. Exactly. But if you want to grow, you will not be the one doing every button click, having every conversation, sending every follow up email, doing every administrative task. Some people are like, yay, that's exciting. I do know some advisors who are like, I never want to hire an admin. And yet they're off to the
Right.
races. The growth wheel is already turning. They're delivering such a valuable service, but they're scared, of figuring all of this out. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think a way to think about it is, of course, again, all that humanness and the qualitative nature of our value to our customer. You want the customer to be buying you, right?
Hmm.
Your name, the advisor, that person to person connection and the conversations you're able to have. But you want that as long as you know that they're inherently actually just buying the experience.
Hmm.
It's you
You are
delivering on the
delivering that
experience
experience.
that you've defined. And if you get hit by a bus and the next person who has a high enough EQ and has the skill set to be an advisor steps into your shoes, they can deliver on that experience. Even if that's not your sort of growth goal as an advisor to bring in more advisors or grow in that way, the point of it is it's that you have that experience and process behind you as the advisor to keep you on the rails and
Hmm.
be repeatable and know what you're doing, and ultimately to spend more time with your customer.
Yeah.
um,
The time you spend with your
to,
customer as you adopt new tech and hire more people, that time, like that's where you should be spending it until you can no longer serve the customer base, right? Like I truly believe the advisor to client interaction is so important, and everything else rises up to support that as the business grows. And eventually then that becomes the repeatable model for another advisor or a junior advisor, or, you know, someone
I,
else.
I want to touch on to kind of make some tangible connections to when people look at this actual KITSIS map and think
Hmm.
about the different pillars and different options, um, sort of what those different areas of tech are and what the sort of like, hey, think about this first moment.
Yeah.
So we talked about marketing, right? There's marketing tools out there for advisors, email campaigns, social media campaigns, all of those things. We kind of covered this one already, but again, it's who are you talking to? What is your story? So
Hmm.
before you define those, before you pick a marketing platform, what story are you telling and who are you telling it to? CRM, you touched on CRM. So there's a bunch of fantastic CRMs out there to manage and support your customer relationships.
Hmm.
But what is your support model? What in the context of your service offering, right? You do these things with this value proposition. How are you going to support that? With what
Hmm.
human capital? And without that context, or you need that context first in order to decide from this lineup of great CRM solutions in our industry, which one actually makes sense for you. Because to your point, analytical advisor, you could look at those
Yeah.
objectively and just say, here's the fastest, here's the
Hmm.
coolest branded one, and whatever, and sort of the other ways of measuring. But at the end of the day, it's just about how does it fit into what you're trying to deliver. You touched on planning tools, bunch of
Hmm.
amazing planning tools out there. How do you do financial planning? What is the
Right.
actual service offer you're trying to deliver in your business? You can't answer the what planning technology should I pick until you've really fully fine tuned that aspect of your offering. Are you
Yeah.
doing really, really deep, complex planning, or pared back, or do you have options in between? Again, you need to define those things before you can make that decision. Investment, same thing. So that's where sort of seeds fits in. And the origin story for us in our wealth business was there are amazing sort of investor assessment tools, ways to deliver custom portfolios, sort of investing engagement stuff that's out there.
Mhm.
but none of it was connected in a way that we felt was going to deliver on this personalized investing experience story that we wanted to tell and deliver on. But again, for advisors, maybe Seeds is a fit, maybe it's not. But at the end of the day, what is your investment story arc, right?
Mhm.
How are you actually manage? How do you intend to manage money? Why? With what, customer type? How do you want to engage investors around who they are as an investor? You need to be asking yourselves
Mhm.
all of those questions. And by the way, and I'll pass it to you because I'm sure I'm missing some categories here, but um, this applies to when I'm talking about our wealth business. That's my dad's business that's been in existence for 40 years. And
Right.
we are still asking these questions of ourselves. So it applies to, more
Yeah.
legacy firms and how to move into the future with new objectives, and the
Mhm.
firms that, weren't advisors last week and they're building
Yeah.
something from scratch. So anyway,
Yeah.
what did I miss?
I mean, those are definitely the biggest ones for sure. And I think that was the point I was going to make is there's kind of a core set of tech that most advisor firms need. The one thing I'll add though, when you're looking at that core tech stack that you may have, is it's so important that you think about the stage you're at. So you just mentioned like your advisory business, it's been in existence, lots of customers, existing staff. There, that's a different stage than the stage that a new firm might be at. So while the tech stack requirements are generally the same at a very high level, or the purpose of each piece of tech is the same, it's so important. And I see some advisors going here quite often. It's important that you don't overcomplicate this early on. So it is
Yeah.
so critical that it meets your use case needs, but that you are doing just enough. You are implementing just enough tech, just enough process to support the level of growth that you're at, because you don't want to be planning 5 growth steps ahead of your current business need. You want to have that in mind, like I mentioned. But when I was saying before, keep in mind the next phase, I'm not talking about like once I am a $1 billion firm. Don't even go there. Think current stage, next stage, and possibly high level thoughts on the next step after that. Because if you think too hard and you're trying to operationalize so much for one person, then you're just slowing yourself down with process. So like I just thought of that while you were talking, that everything we're saying, it's not to say that from day one you need to have these really strict, tight, scalable processes. That's not what it is. You do have to have some framework, just enough to hold you up, that can grow and can become more complicated and can become more scalable over time.
Yes, it's very easy to over engineer, and
Yes.
in the seeds business we're always trying to protect ourselves from that.
Yeah.
And we need this thing, and we need this thing and this thing to continue to deliver on the vision that we've identified of what this
Yes.
business is meant to be. But yeah, one step at a time, because you can
Mm-hmm.
over engineer very quickly.
And slow
um
yourself down.
one other Exactly, one other thing on that, and then I'll pass it to you, Kelsey, on what are you learning, what are you excited about. But and this is kind of an extension of the point you just made, but the buzzword of being integrated, an integrated tech stack, everything needs to be
Yeah.
glued together, and you can really over engineer the connecting of the dots of all these different elements that I just ran through a minute ago. um, Ironically, again, back to the point, we see a lot of firms, and this is arguably more typical of sort of larger enterprise firms, where they spend all this time and money uh, in trying to push data around between different platforms, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
unimportant. There are reasons for it, and it
Yeah.
does simplify the advisor's process. If you create a household in a CRM, you don't want to recreate it in 10 different places, things like that, and that is
Mm-hmm.
part of what makes things integrated. But again, if you haven't actually defined an integrated customer experience
Yeah.
from when they walk in the door to they've been your client for 2 years, what exactly that journey should be,
Mm-hmm.
then figuring out where to move data around between platforms is irrelevant, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything other than efficiencies for the advisor. So again, that's the
Yeah.
theme here, is define that journey first.
Yeah, I do just want to make one point on that. And it's important to evaluate the integration points between the tools, right? So you should definitely evaluate that. But I have seen the mistake made, and I've made this mistake myself as someone who's implemented new technology, of focusing too much on the implementation of the tech and not enough on, is this actually working? Once you're right at that point of rollout, like, is this working and is it delivering the experience I wanted, before I spend all of this time mushing all of this together and like integrating everything and sending data back and forth? Like, is the tool working right now? Because a lot of these tools, they're SaaS tools. You can just cancel your subscription if it's not working. So it is one note. One other thing before we turn to our last question is, like, I just want to point this out, because a lot of times I think this kind of throws advisors off. So we talked a lot about like the known needs. I know I need a CRM. I know I need a planning tool. Those are very known needs. You can go into that decision making process with use cases defined and people defined, and you can know what you're looking for in the company you work with. But there's also unknown needs where, like, you haven't identified the root cause of a problem, and maybe you are piecing things together right now to solve for something, and then all of a sudden a tech may cross your you may see it online or at a conference, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, should I add this to my tech stack or not? That's a kind of different evaluation process, and I was hoping to get there in this conversation. I know we're kind of running tight on time, but just a few tips on that is to make sure that when you go into that evaluation process, as soon as it crosses your path and you become aware that there may be a solution, to really sit down and think about that root cause problem and think about what this could do for your business, and then go through that evaluation process and look around the industry. Are there any other players? Is there anyone else that I could be meeting this need for? And what does this alleviate? What does this replace within my tech stack, so that you don't end up with, I see a lot of like bigger firms that have like 15 pieces of technology, and they're all solving these little needs, and there could be ways of maybe something new entered your tech stack, you could have gotten rid of something else, but because you just got excited about the new tech, you didn't think through all of the different implications across the business, and that can also get very messy and hard for your team as you grow to manage.
Yeah, again, I think that that kind of puts a bow on the conversation, because it just goes back to, what is the process and experience that you are trying to deliver first. And again, that
Mm-hmm.
was my lived experience with what ultimately led to building Seeds. If you start with, here's the list, choose from these options in these categories, that can be limiting.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are you trying to create first? Does the technology exist? Hopefully it does. And then you assess from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Next, what are we learning? What's going on? We're learning a lot right now. We
Oh
actually
yeah.
just stepped out of context for the audience. We had a multi-day all hands meeting with the Seeds team over the last couple of days. So I would say, Kelsey, we've been learning a lot, but what's on your
Yeah.
list?
Yeah, I mean, learning. So we usually like learning or excited about, I think, but learning, I'll do both because it's kind of tied together. So learning, I'm learning so much from just our other team members at Seeds right now. We have really gotten to a point where we are having really deep conversations about how we could better serve our customers and how we could solve some of their core uh, problems within their businesses that they're seeking solutions to, and there's nothing out there to do it. And so I'm learning so much because you have done a great job of hiring people from different backgrounds within the industry, and it's been really fun as we look at kind of the asset management world meets tech to explore these different pain points and issues for our customers. So I learned so much in the last couple of days on that, and I'm excited because it just, I'm just like a nerd about this stuff, like team building and just teams solving problems together. Nothing, I'm so enthusiastic about it, and it really felt like over the last 2 days we were really having some great conversations and vibing and building the team together and solving problems and making decisions that are going to ultimately impact our customers, who I care deeply about. So
It was such a relief over the last, couple of weeks, month, of you just chomping at the bit to get to this all hands
oh my
meeting, and
gosh,
then
I know.
you
Set me
thrived.
free.
It's
I just
yeah,
love it.
exactly.
There's nothing I love
It's
more in
it
business,
is
for sure.
amazing. Yeah, and it is exciting. That's another just sort of aside, but to the point, what does your team say about what you're trying to build, and having perspectives
Yeah.
from your human capital and trying to make these decisions. I have a somewhat similar one, and I talked about it with the team yesterday. for advisors and really just, leaders trying to run businesses in general, I think I'm learning how hard it is to stick to an agenda, and specifically the agenda to engage your team one-on-one about them
Mm-hmm.
and how they're winning and thriving in the environment you've created in the business that you're
Yeah.
running. And so I have one-on-one meetings scheduled throughout, across, a couple weeks during the month. And it's very easy and it's more comfortable, arguably, for both people to just, kind of go into tactics and, hey, did you make this phone call? And, go through to-do lists, as opposed to, hey, my coaching, right? What's working? What's not? Where can I
Mm-hmm.
help? What do you see? And also, it's a moment, I had a one-on-one recently and really tried to stick to the agenda and talk about their career path. And it was so enlightening of the
Yeah.
information they were sharing to me, because I was just giving them the space to give me feedback and hear, direct one-on-one information that I hadn't heard before. And I think we all naturally assume whatever we're thinking about their role or this thing in the business or this plan, we're all on
Mm-hmm.
the same page, right? We're all thinking the exact same thing, and go figure we're not. So I guess the takeaway is, as trying to lead a business, you need that space for one-on-one engagement with team members that's not tactical.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally just about how are they winning, how do they think about the future and of their
Yeah.
role, where they fit in the business, and you'll get a lot of amazing information out of it to help make decisions.
Yeah, the art of the one-on-one. I do think one-on-ones are just like such a key, like getting that right is so important, especially if you're a growing business, because there is so much change and there are, missed moments of connection and missed moments of like uh clarity between leadership and then the people like boots on the ground or even the leaders throughout the organization. So it's been actually really fun to watch over the last we've had so much change over the last few months, so it's been kind of fun for me to watch you kind of make adjustments, and we're all coming together to be like, is this meeting still serving us? Like, how could we better communicate about this project, or how could we better plan for this? And I do think it's been really fun to watch. So yeah, definitely it's definitely relevant to advisors who are in growing businesses as well, because
That's a good that's a good commercial for being a longtime listener of this podcast, because as we've said, we're learning as we go. We're communicating what we feel is working as we build our business and how to maybe apply those things in your advisory businesses. But it's certainly going to evolve because
yeah.
we're learning things on the fly. So it's pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. With that, if you have not checked out what we're doing at Seeds, go to www.seedsinvestor.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn or on the website. Go fill out our newsletter if you want to follow along with what we're up to. But that's it. We will see you next time.